Mike. What day is it, Mike? It's hump day. Yes, and we are halfway through our week. And as you recall, on Monday, we were in our third series of understanding yourself. Let's hop into the classroom. Okay, so we were talking about temperament, and on Monday, I asked you, are you a thinker or are you a feeler? And what's the difference? Well, let's catch up to that. I want to retrace our steps since we first started the series. We first looked at the episode 1 approach to people, how we approach people, and how those people energize us or suck the energy out of us. And then we have episode 2, the approach to knowing. How do we know things? Right? That was, we start out with introversion, extroversion, then intuitive versus sensate. And then we talked about our approach to decision making, right? Do we think or do we feel? Let's dive down into that a little bit deeper to get an idea of what that really means. Because remember, thinking is an objective action, where feeling is a subjective action because we're dealing with emotions. So we've got the continuum, feeling versus thinking, and we splice it right down the middle. And again, we're rarely extreme one and rarely extreme the other. And I would caution you not to be right in the middle. I understand that a lot of these are situational. Well, it depends on the situation. I get that. I totally get that. However, understand that you have a propensity to be dominantly one or the other, even if it's a mild dominance. And that'll be really important for you when we get to the end of this journey, where we can give you a customized individual profile on your temperament type or your behavioral traits. So when we talk about feeling versus thinking, these are the biases. Now, not a negative bias. It's not like a judgmental thing or a prejudice of any kind. A bias simply means an inclination, right? So the feeling people out there have an inclination toward checking their values and morals in decision making, right? Is it aligned with my values? Is it moral and fair to all, affected? That's going to sway the feeler. While the thinker is cause and effect. Okay, they're thinking more factually, if this, then what? And that then what needs to be something of value, interestingly enough, right? It's like on Monday when I shared with you, thinkers have to think about something before they understand how they feel about it. Where feelers will feel the emotion first and then have to think about it. So they're both thinking and feeling, but one happens before the other. And that's where your dominance lies. People in harmony is what the feeler is looking for. So at first they're thinking, is it, match my values? Is it morale? Is there a sense of morality in it? Right. And ultimately, to some degree, it's about people and having harmonious relationships. That's what the feeler cares about. Where the thinker is thinking in terms of right or wrong, black or white. They're very clear on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. If it's acceptable, but it's not popular among the people need to learn why it's acceptable. They need to understand. Versus the feeler might be, well, we're spirit of the law kind of people. As long as nobody gets hurt, that it's moral, we can shape and mold it. Where thinkers see things as more concrete. black or white. Those people who are in our tribe are going to accept this without question. And those who may not belong in our tribe may resist it or, have something to say about it for sure. Relationship oriented. Feelers are very big on harmonious relationships. It is very, very much a people world. Emotional intelligence ranks extremely high in the feelers, where in the thinker world, it's like logic and being objective is a value that we strive for, that we look to achieve. The ultimate value is doing things that are logical. And in the minds of the thinker, these are things that make sense. The things that the feeler does, thinkers can kind of wrap their arms around from a thought process, but they're like, why do you do that? Why do you create this world of shades of gray when clearly we're working in a world of black and white, factual information or not? So you can see how there can be conflict between these two temperaments, but also, the feelers kind of they like the idea that the thinker's clear on things. They like that clarity, but they don't like the stringentness. Where the thinkers will see the value of the feeler because of the harmonious relationships they create. And the thinker likes that. They find that attractive, whether they are willing to admit it or not. So both of these things value each other in certain ways for different reasons. And then we've got the feeler who says, look, it's personal. Everything is personal. I pour myself into my work. Don't tell me it's just business, because it's not. It's a reflection of who I am. It's my life investment. It's part of my value system. And when you say my value system doesn't have the value that I give it, then those are fighting words. When in fact, the thinker is, look, you need to learn to be more objective. It's not personal. We are running a business and there are numbers involved and, strategies in which we need to achieve those numbers. And it can be calculable down to everybody doing their job and check marking their to-do list. And that is the world of the thinker. And then again, the feeler is like, they're looking for individual fairness, because individual fairness leads to what? Harmonious relationships, right? So they're all the feelers are all driving for this sense of harmony because they believe that leads it to maybe an intuitive, and there is such thing as the NF profile and the ST profile. We'll talk about that later in a later episode. But they see that when people are working in a harmonious environment, they're more productive, they're more creative, and they're more innovative. This is the thought process of the feeler. And then, of course, the thinkers are like, they believe in fairness, but it needs to be fair and equal. Everybody needs to be treated the same. That what we do for one person, we need to do for everyone. And that sounds logical. That makes sense. So you can see how there are a lot of shared similarities between feelers and thinkers, but there's also clearly a line of delineation between the two. And again, we value traits in others that we may not possess ourselves. So as a feeler, we may look at the decision or the thinkers and say, what do they have that we can adopt, but expect they're going to modify it, right? Because that's what feelers do. And thinkers are going to say, gosh, we've got this great structure, right? We've got this great schematic, this great skeleton of the business, but we seem to be missing something, and that's the flesh, and that's the kind of dynamic that happens in the feeling world. So they really do value different things the other possesses, and want to, if they're smart, they want to incorporate those things because they want the best of everything. And that's why it's best that we work in a collaborative relationship, feelers and thinkers together, and capitalize on the strengths of both. So I want you to give it some thought. Take a look at this list and say, okay, which am I more of? And it could be a minor dominant element, one side or the other, but you are fundamentally one or the other. You're not right down in the middle. Okay. You don't want to be that chameleon, because what happens is people will have a difficult time understanding you. They'll find you confusing. They'll find you wishy-washy because you flip-flop. Your behavior is too unpredictable, so people may be apprehensive to trusting you. So these are all important things to think about, because in this series, really, it's all about learning about who you are. I mean, we all have our own idea from an ego standpoint, and I don't mean ego, I mean it in the psychological application of the ego, right? We all have an idea of who we are. But the reality is that we do have blind spots. And we want to learn more about ourselves, because some of the things that we may not be conscious of may be getting us results that we don't want. And we don't know how to change those results. An analysis of looking through our temperament, and when we're done with this series, you will have way more information than what I'm sharing here on the screen. I promise you, I will make it worth your while. And if you haven't already done so, let me go to my bookshelf here. And again, I don't make any money off of this book. It's Please Understand Me by David Kiersey. David Kiersey and Marilyn Bates. I just had him as a professor in college. He was extremely knowledgeable. It's a simple, easy read. I think I read it in a flight from Michigan to John Wayne Airport. It has the test in there. You can answer the questions and score your temperament and then read in depth about the profile, but you don't need to buy a book. I'm going to give you resources on how to find out more about yourself and learn. I would recommend 3 months of just going through everything and trying to see the parallels of what your profile is telling you and how it shows up in your life. Not just in your work life, but in your personal life, so that you can really solidify it, feel confident. Okay, I understand myself now. I know the strengths that I possess from the standpoint of the profile. And I also know the weaknesses, and I'm going to write down a list of things that I can do to overcome those weaknesses, or work on at least those weaknesses. That's what really this work is all about. And it's so important, because until we really know and understand ourselves, it is only then that we can start to look outward and see the different people who are on your team or in your tribe, one business, one family, and begin to look to see how their behavior relates to their temperament style. I mean, I've gotten so familiar with this that and facilitated so many teams. I can go in and pretty much within 5 to 10 minutes of talking to you, I can get your temperament profile within at least 90 to 95% accuracy. And what I do is then I tailor how I communicate with you in terms of your personality temperament. I speak to your temperament, and that helps me communicate more effectively with other people in shorter periods of time. It helps me build trust. It helps me build the relationship, right? And remember, business is relationship. Life is relationship. We're social creatures. We're not meant to go through this world alone. And what kind of life would it be if we did? So these are all tools that I want to give you to help you understand yourself better. And then at some point we will expand out to better understanding those around you. All right. So once again, we have a natural inclination one way or the other. You need to decide, and do me a favor, write it down below. Again, I hope you're doing this with a trusted friend, a partner, a spouse, someone who knows you well, that they can say, address that believed perceived dynamic once again. I believe that I am this, but the feedback that I get is that I'm perceived slightly different. Usually it's only slightly. Sometimes, could be dramatically, but we need to have that feedback. We need to know how we show up for other people. And then we need to go back to our profile and say, what is it that I'm doing that causes me to see myself differently than those people who are around me? Because that can be a blind spot, right? It can be, very much so. Question that. Don't forget to put it down below. Have a great week. We're halfway through. The weekend is in sight. Take care of yourself, my friend. Lead well. And I will see you on Monday for our next Cup of Joe.